Hello, my friends. Welcome to Let's Talk, produced by Wise Mindly Inc. I'm your host, Coach Che Marville. In this space, we dive into transformative conversations that hopefully inspire you to grow, heal, and have a deeper connection to yourself and to the world around you. So, let's talk, let's connect, let's grow together. Today's guest has spent a career doing the unimaginable work of building inclusion and diversity and making people feel like they matter. He's worked at the highest levels of corporate Canada, from Walmart Canada to Export Development Canada, where he served as a director and chief diversity officer. He's influenced diversity and influenced strategy at some of the country's most respected institutions. He's even received the King Charles Coronation Medal for service to the country and for his profession. And now, in one of the boldest moves of his career, he has stepped out as an entrepreneur and a pioneer, and he believes in the power of DEI, or if you want to call it EDI, and its impact in Canada. He's not just talking about diversity. He's redefining it. The idea that most powerful form of diversity is not what you look like, but what you think. He holds an MBA in International Marketing from York University and a Bachelor of Commerce and Entrepreneurship from McGill University. Please welcome the President of Diversity of Thought Strategies, Richard Pinnock. Richard, hello.
Hello. Yeah, well, thank you. I'm very excited to be here today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you, Che.
This is the first time that we have sat down together and chatted. And I only mention it because we live in the same community. We circle around the same, some of the same friends and acquaintances. We've been quoted in articles, the same article, but we've never actually sat down to speak. So I feel incredibly privileged to have you here. You've done so much in the Oakville community and beyond. I want to thank you as a member of the community for the work that you have done and that you continue to do. But my God, how are you doing right now when DEI kind of has a bad name?
Well, I guess that's unfortunate, really, when you consider the projection for Canada moving forward. And I'm very much a numbers, data-driven, evidence-based kind of person. So
tell me.
Yeah, the idea of really focusing on what's right and what we should do and so on, that doesn't resonate with businesses, right? So
Yes.
they want to see what's in it for me, like what's the bottom line here, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm glad you asked, because I do have a lot of evidence and a lot of experience that can help you prepare and understand the context of how we're changing as a country. I've done some projections on the Stats Canada 2041 census. They were saying that by that time, about 42% of the population will identify as a member of a racialized, or technical term is visible minority community member. So when you look at birth rates and so on, do a quick extrapolation, it's going to be probably by the 2051, I'm very certain, by 2051 census, the majority of this country will be made up of people who identify as being members of racialized communities. So my question to you, whether you're a large bank or whether you're a public service agency or whatever, my question is, so what are you doing about that? You remember we had the Y2K?
Yes,
You're still
yes.
kind of young. Do you remember that? The Y-
Yes, I do, of course.
Yeah, so we all thought our computers are going to blow up, or
Yeah.
the microwave's going to blow up.
Yeah.
That was like that short. Like, that's how fast it goes.
Was,
so
yes.
it's going to be about 20 years that we're facing this inevitable reality that the majority of this country, and I'm talking about our workforce, our labor force, and of course our customer base, is going to be, the majority will be a member of a visible minority group. So the question is, what are you doing about that?
See, okay, there's a lot to unpack there, but I want to take one step back.
Mm-hmm.
You were involved in DEI long before it was popular and unpopular.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, so was I, but that's a conversation for another time. Where did this come from for you? Like, why were you so motivated? Because you've dedicated your life to doing this work.
I think my life has dedicated me to doing this work. My first experience, by the way, on that long tenure of working, you know Al Ramsey? He
Yes,
was, Al.
of course.
And he's recently, I think, departed from TD, but
Yes.
he's a wonderful guy. He was a junior guy when I started, and I saw him. And
No.
one of my colleagues, this was with the one of the organizations. So I was with a number of senior folks from Export Development Canada. We were at one of the events, community
Yes.
events in Toronto, and one of the folks said, "Oh, that's Al Ramsey over there. I'd like to meet Al Ramsey." And I'm like, "Yeah, Richard, do you know Al Ramsey?" I said, "Yeah, I know Al, yeah." And so anyway, here he comes walking. He's full of life and
Yes.
smiling and
Yes.
acknowledging everybody.
Yes.
So this individual couldn't hold himself back, and he goes, "Hi, Al Ramsey. I'd like to meet you." Right? So Al's like, "Oh, hi, hello," and so on and so forth. And I'm standing there, and Al's like, all these people in his face and everything, right? So he's being very gracious, as he always is.
Always is gracious.
He's like saying, "Oh, hello, nice to meet you," and blah, 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 blah. And I'm standing right there, and he doesn't realize, just look to the left. It's me, right? So anyway, the person goes on and on and on. And I go, "Hey, Al, do you remember me?" And he goes, "Oh my goodness, it's Richard Pinnock." And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you. Oh, you look so young." Typical Al thing, right? And he goes to my colleague. He goes, "This guy is the original gangster of DEI."
Really?
Yeah. So Al calls me the OG of DEI.
The OG of Well, why? Why? Tell me why.
Well, yeah. So I grew up in Montreal
Yes.
on a very diverse street in a suburb of Montreal called Chomedey, Laval, which is on the north shore of Montreal. And on our little street, we had very diverse, eclectic group of individuals.
Yes.
Many of them were in management. My father was in being a porter, but he managed to have that vision, very Jamaican.
Your dad was a porter.
CNR, yeah.
What?
Before that, he left Jamaica. He worked on a plantation picking oranges in Florida and so on. They called it a student work program, but it was
Yes.
not very well paid.
Of course.
And he had this dream of getting into boxing. He moved his way to New York City. He was like a short order cook, and he did dishes and all that. He had a half sister in Montreal.
Yes.
So he went to Point St. Charles in Montreal, and then there he met my mom. My mom now had immigrated from Germany after the war, as she was, I think, 18 years old, and she had this crazy idea. Her and two other girls, they left that atrocious situation in Germany, and they wanted to marry different people. So one wanted to marry a black man, one wanted to marry an Indian man, one wanted to marry a Chinese man.
Really?
Yeah. So they came. They worked as domestics. I think my mom worked for the Bronfman family, and there was this domestic
Yes.
scheme that Dr. Jean Augustine talks about all the time. So they came about that time. And lo and behold, my mom was, also working as an usherette at the Palace Theater on St. Catherine Street. And my dad was fascinated, he
Yes.
comes from a place, Clarendon, Kellets.
Yes.
So, not very advanced. So he was blown away by the big screen, Rita Hayworth, and
Of
he started. So
course.
anyway, he started seeing her, and he recognized her, and he came. And next thing you know, they got together, and they ended up getting married. And she said, "You know what? I think you have to get a real job." My father was working as a pug, like a sparring partner with Chavallo and some of these guys, right? So then he said, "Okay, I'm going to get a real job," and he got a job with CNR, which at the Union United Church was the center of the black community.
Yes.
Near Atwater Market there. That's where I was baptized, Reverend Est. He's a famous person,
Incredible.
yeah. And then, he started working. So he worked for, I think, about 32 years on the train. When my father was working there, they said the porters would bring, the sleeping car porters and so on
Yes.
would bring their sons, not so much the daughters, but the sons as kind of a rite of passage. Once you're around 10 years old, 11 years old, and you get to sleep in the empty berths and so on, right?
Yes.
So interesting. When Pierre Elliott Trudeau did his trip across Canada on the train, my father was one of the ambassadors. And the guys used to say, "Oh, your father thinks he owns the railroad," Like he would treat every can of Coke and he would treat everything as if it was his own. So that kind of was instilled in me, this idea of taking pride in your work
Yes.
and so on, right?
So your dad and your dad was part of the Windrush generation, really,
Mm-hmm.
like the ones who came after 1948.
Correct.
That's
Yeah,
incredible.
into Miami. And then, so one crucible moment. I have three quick ones to talk to you about how I got involved in this. So one, My dad used to always say, I have a big brain. You got a big brain, and he used to tell all his buddies on the train that my son has got a big brain. So when I met these guys, after all the passengers eat their dinner and so on, then that's when the guys eat. So my dad would, one of the guys would get me and say, okay, come, we're going to eat, dinner, right? So I'm sitting in there. And so one of the guys says, so what is it you want to be? Your dad says you have a big brain. What is it you want to be when you grow up? And I said, well, I think I'd like to work on the railroad. And my father gave me this look, right? Like darts, right? And I'm thinking, and they all went quiet, right? So I thought, what happened, right? So when I went back to bed, my dad never hit me once, right? But he poked me with his finger, right? Like he was like a boxer, almost like bodybuilder kind of physique. He poked me in my chest. He said, don't you ever say that again, right? So I'm like, whoa, right? So interesting, the next morning when we had breakfast, I was like kind of worried. I didn't understand. One of the guys said, hey, your dad was a little upset, but that's because we want something better for our kids than what we got. Okay, so interesting. So I'm the big brain.
It's so interesting also that you did not perceive it as less. You were just proud because your father was proud. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it wasn't really his choice. It was all he had as an option.
Yeah, and that turned into a pension, and that turned into burial provisions and free rides on the train for my mom until she passed away, and a lot of good stuff, as a unionized worker. It was a really, really good move. In Chomedey, Laval, down the street from us, in this very eclectic neighborhood, like our neighbors were Egyptian, people right next door were British, we had a Jewish family, we had another German family, Japanese, Chinese, French Canadian, all on our street, and we all played hockey together and everything. Yeah. At the end of my street was Thomas H. Bowes and Prince Charles Elementary School, two schools.
Right, to get, yes.
So, kindergarten to grade 3 and then grade 4 to grade 6. And they shared a common, playground. And so my first day, I had my little suit on, my little bow tie, and, had my flannel pants. And I was quite surprised when one of the kids came up and said, hey, what's wrong with you? Were you left in the oven too long? And I'm like, what? Like, I didn't understand. Like,
right.
What do you mean, right? We grew up never thinking that your color or these differences really mattered. We were just all different. Like we were all unique and we were all wonderful. Mm. So I went home and I asked, I was very disturbed by that. And my father was on the road, as they say, on the road, like on the train, right? I said, some kid said that I was left in the oven too long, right? And my mother said, well, that kid doesn't know what they're talking about. And that didn't make sense to me. But my mom was right. That kid did not know what they were talking about. Mm. So that was one crucible moment. And at that point, rather than, being afraid or running or fight or flight or, freeze, I started to think. And I used my thinking as almost a defense mechanism to be very aware of my surroundings and to understand that I had the ability to think and I could pretty well think my way out of any situation. So that was my first moment. I fast forward McGill University. I graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce you had mentioned. And it was my first day, my first interview. Having graduated, it was at that time, there was no on-campus recruiting. I think it was the first time since World War II that McGill canceled all on-campus recruiting fairs and so on. But there were a couple of jobs, a few unusual ones. So one had come up for a marketing coordinator role with a national paint company. Right. So they're looking for somebody with a Bachelor of a marketing background, chemistry background. I initially wanted to be a doctor. So I was doing the health sciences at Cégep Vanier College.
Right, okay.
So I had this unique combination. So I was so excited. It was a sunny day, kind of like today.
Yes.
And I had my 74 Challenger, and I was on top of the world, right? Like I'm gonna slay these people, right? And there's nobody else had a job interview, but I'm gonna get this one, right?
Yes,
so off I go. I walk in, and I said, hello. And this lady said, yes, can I help you? I said, yeah, Richard Pinnock. I'm here from McGill for the job interview. And she said, oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, here, have a seat. We have this aptitude test. I've been here for 14 years, and nobody's ever finished it. So you have 12 minutes. There's 50 questions. I later learned it was the Wonderlic test. I didn't know at the time.
Really? Just explain what that is.
So it's an aptitude test. There's
like the Wonderlic, just so for those who...
Well, the Wonderlic is a test, an aptitude test consisting of 50 questions that you have to complete in 12 minutes. So it's quite difficult.
Yes.
So she said, so do you understand? And I said, yeah, I understand. So I'm like, okay, you got this. You got this. Yeah. So she set one of those egg timers, you crank it, and she went in her office. So I said, okay, here we go. I'm finishing it. 11 minutes later, I knock on her door, and she said, "What is it?" And I said, "I'm finished." And she said, "Okay," right? She thought I was fooling or playing or something, right? She grabbed the sheets out of my hand. I'm like, "Oh my goodness," right? So she went through, she said, "Have a seat," right? So I had a seat, and then she came out a few minutes later, and she had this look on her face, and she said, "Well, Richard, you did really well." And I said, "How did I do?" She said, "You got 44 correct." And I said, "Well, that's great. Well, what was the highest score you've seen in your 14 years doing this?" And she said, "The highest score I ever saw was 45. But remember, I finished in 11 minutes.
Yes.
And I finished.
Exactly. Yeah.
So she had a solemn look on her face. She said to me, "I got to be honest with you, I can't put you forward. I'm afraid I'll lose my job."
What? What year was this?
That would have been 83.
My God.
Yeah. So I looked at her, I smiled, I thanked her for her time, and I said, "Hope you have a nice day." And out I went. So I remember leaning against my car. It was a sunny day. I had the sun on my face and everything, and I thought to myself, I'm going to do whatever I can to help other Canadians not experience what I just experienced. And that's what drives me to this day. So that's my second part of my...
What's the third?
Well, the third one was my father's situation. Like I said, the kindergarten.
Yeah.
That's the bookend, starting school, like first day. And then on my last day, I had this, right? So those are the two bookends. And in between,
Incredible.
I had, multiple being called the N-word, this
Yes.
and that and whatever. So yeah, I was very aware that I better start thinking smart if I'm going to be able to not only survive, but thrive in this environment. And that's what I try to instill in young people. I'm not all about racism and all that. I'm about reaching your God-given potential. And that's what I really try to inspire, particularly young people and newcomers, about what Canada has to offer. So that's what drives me.
Can I ask you a kind of personal question? Psychologically, when you have a series of events where you're being judged on your race, for you, did you struggle with who you were because of that, even though you came from a community where it was very eclectic and very diverse and people accepted each other? Outside of the community, it sounds like that wasn't how it was. How did you come to terms with who you were?
How did I do it? I did it quickly. That's how I did it. And I realized then that I had this capacity to think. And by the way, the Wonder Lake, less than 1% of the people get a score of 44 or higher. And almost nobody finishes the test.
No.
So I'm at that time,
Yes.
I didn't realize it, but researching it later, that would put me in the top maybe 0.25% of the public.
But you didn't know that at that time.
I didn't know. No, but she knew.
She knew.
Yeah.
And where did you get the strength to decide, okay, this does not matter. Like, this rejection does not matter to me?
No, it does matter. It mattered a lot. It was a crucible moment in my life, and it drives me today. Even talking about it, I get emotional now. And this is like 40 years later. But what I realized is that, remember, there's very few jobs. There's only 3 or 4. And I got one of my excellent relationship at the Career Center, right?
Yes.
So what am I going to do? Start saying, oh, these people are racist. And that's the last time they're going to place me anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll deal with this in my own way, in my own time. I'm not going to react. Viktor Frankl talks about man's search for meaning, right?
In his book, yes.
Yeah. And
incredible book.
I always talk to people about that. And what I really relish is the idea that I have the capacity and the brains to respond. And the way I do that is I look, I pay attention, and I don't just react. I try to withhold that tendency to react, because 9 times out of 10, your reaction, that spontaneous fight or flight or freeze,
Yes.
is either going to get you eaten or beaten. Right? One of those two.
Well, I think it's also about what it does to you psychologically. For some people, they get beaten down. You went the other way, and now here you are in 2025, 2026. Oh my God, it's 2026. You in 2025, you created a new program. Can you talk about that? Because that's really, in a way, it started in 2025, but it really began 40 years ago.
That's right. Well, after retiring from full-time employment, and
You're retired?
No, I'm not. My brother said, "Don't tell anyone you're retired," because I'm not retired.
I was going to say I do not think a retired person acts like you.
Yeah, right. And well, that's one of my learnings. But yeah, so I wanted to retire from this day-to-day, post-COVID, and now we have to go back to the office and all that. And I thought my lifelong dream was to start my own consulting practice in this area, and I've learned a lot. I've helped a lot of people. As I mentioned, over 10,000 kids have participated in my training. I've worked internationally trained professionals. I was like keynote speaker, 900 people there. I'll be doing that again in October.
Fantastic.
And a lot of stuff like that, right? So so I wanted to try my hand. My degree at McGill was in entrepreneurship. We were doing a sample of the Harvard University case study approach at that time. So that's what I wanted to do. But things happened, and I took very challenging jobs that nobody in their right mind would take. A lot of my colleagues end up being CEOs of major insurance companies, and my locker partner was all my colleagues were all brilliant, and they all went on, but somehow I was struggling with this so-called glass ceiling. And it's not a figment of my imagination. I mean, you look at the stats, you look at the representation at management level jobs. So I was always trying to do tough things, always had to be measurable, so that I had the ability to demonstrate my value. But doing that for a long time, 25 years of that.
Yes.
Is it 25? Yeah, about
30?
40 years of that almost. Yeah.
Right.
35 years. You get tired after a while, right? And as you grow older and you have children and you have responsibilities, and my daughters are now becoming young women. And I know you're involved. You support the various community events like the Canadian Caribbean Association.
Absolutely.
I was MC, if you remember, at the event.
The one in February,
Yeah,
at the beginning of the month. Just as an aside. God, I want to ask you so many things. We need 7 hours, but I just want to tell you, I loved that event. Of course, February can be very busy for some of us, right? So I don't always get to go to those events. And I went to the one that you all did. It was fantastic. And the reason I thought it was fantastic was that it was an incredible sort of tapestry of the Caribbean diaspora. I think that you explored, not you, your group explored so many different parts and elements of being Caribbean in Canada and in North America that you don't always see, and it was so much fun. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah,
I definitely. I'm not plugging you guys, but I do want to plug you guys because you're doing amazing work. But I'm plugging you because it was an extraordinary event.
Yeah, thank you for that. The Canadian Caribbean Association of Halton. Check it out at www.ccah.ca. Yeah, so that's our website. And, interestingly, many people don't realize, I think Dr. Augustine said she's been a member of 61 different Caribbean organizations. And the one thing they all have in common is none of them are around today. So she said our community is good at starting groups and associations and that kind of thing, but not very good at sustaining. The Canadian Caribbean Association, if you recall, this is our 49th year of operation. So we're on the road to 50 years, which is amazing. And 2 years ago, we did, during Black History Month, it was a leap year, I think it was 2 years ago, 29 days, we did 110 events. So working in all the school boards, Dr. Augustine's movie, Steadfast, we brought 1,000 kids into the film.ca theater here.
Yes.
So we bust them in from, both school boards. So 1,000 kids. So 200 kids every day for 5 days, culminating in a red carpet event. So that's the kind of thing we do. It's very top drawer and so on. But I have to tell you, after 20 years, it's been 20 years I've been involved in the Canadian Caribbean Association. After retiring from my professional life, I've just announced last week that I'm retiring from the Canadian Caribbean Association board.
What?
Yep.
Why?
Because you were asking about this, what am I doing now with my own thing, right? So
Is that why? Is it because it's just taking off? So just take another step back to my original question, because here we are in 2026. We're still dealing with the backlash against DEI or EDI. Maybe you don't agree that there is a backlash.
There is a backlash.
Do you feel very impacted by that, or do you feel like you are innovating and iterating in new ways because of it?
I feel motivated. So, of all things, I finally retire from my professional work. My kids are finally on their moving, like they moved in together, my two daughters downtown, and so on.
Yes.
And I'm saying, 20 years, we've just recruited 7 new board members for the CCH. We've got some funding coming in, all sorts of stuff. I think it's time for me to step aside, right? And let these young Turks take over, So then we hear all this stuff about DEI, you're a diversity hire, you're a fascist, all this stuff going on south of the border, and there's a big spillover into Canada. It's kind of a convenient opportunity for some companies to say, maybe we should cut back on our DEI program, and we're not really sure what benefits we're getting, and let's cut our staff, and we want to hit our numbers, and this is what's happening now in Canada. I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So this motivates me to say, no, now is not the time to be cutting back on DEI. As I had mentioned earlier, by 2051, the majority of Canadians are going to be members of visible minority groups. So what are you doing about it? And don't say, oh, we're cutting back, right? We're starting early. Like, that's not a good answer. So what I've done is I thought deep and hard. I was in Costa Rica. My best friend, Darren Rennick, he is the founder of ziplining. He invented ziplining. He's Canadian. Oh. So I was down in the rainforest and monkeys on the trees and everything, and I was kind of doing my sort of decompress,
Yes.
After finishing December 2024, and I want to think, what am I going to do, and what about this DEI stuff and everything? Right. And I thought back to Rosalie Abella. She was the she was the one that led the Abella Commission, looking into ways to further employ underemployed groups in Canada. That would be women, visible minorities, people with disability, persons with disabilities, and Indigenous people. Those were the 4 employment equity groups, and that was the launch of the Employment Equity Act in 1986. At that time, 20% of women, 20% of leadership positions were women. Today, it's 30%. Not a lot of progress after 40 years. Let's not even go into visible minority women. It's 6%, by the way, in case you're wondering.
And going down, actually.
Yeah, let's not even talk about the other groups, right? So it hasn't been very, very effective. So I thought deep and hard, and I realized, the rationale behind the Employment Equity Act was to leverage the lived experience of these underemployed people.
Yes.
And the reason for that is probably because it makes sense to leverage the diversity of thought that comes with that. Boom. Okay, that's where diversity of thought comes from, in my mind. So I was so eager to get back and to start talking about reframing, repositioning DEI, not as something that's toxic or whatever, but maybe something that's run its course. Maybe we're ready for the next iteration of DEI.
Course.
And what would that be, Richard? It's diversity of thought, where whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, straight white male, person with disability, doesn't matter, right? We all have a lived experience. We all have uniqueness. And as a leader, if you can let your team know, hey, I care about all of you. I love you all, right? And I just want to make sure that we're all understanding that we don't have just the right to share our opinions, but you have an obligation here on my team. So I want to hear from all of you. And culturally, some cultures are like reticent to speak up. And we hear all that sort of on the periphery.
Yes.
But the reality is, as a leader, if you just step up and say, I want to share the engagement survey results, because now many companies are getting self-identification, so you can see visible minority, women, and so on. So a typical question or statement on your engagement survey would be something like, I feel comfortable speaking freely without fear of repercussion. So using the Likert scale, you either strongly disagree with that, you disagree, you're neutral, you agree, or you strongly agree. Those are the 5 things, right? So if you agree or strongly agree, that's a positive sentiment. Would you be surprised to know that typically visible minorities will have a score on that around 55% of the people will agree or strongly agree, whereas non-visible minority is around 80 to 85%.
So non-visible minorities feel that they can disagree. They feel safe to do so.
It's like, what do you mean? I can say anything. What are you talking about?
Right.
What you talking about? So, and then other people like, no, I don't feel comfortable speaking. So imagine as a leader, you have this diverse, eclectic, wonderful team, and you have no idea that inside Che Marville's head,
yes,
you're going to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
And if you could unleash that and create an environment where people realize that as a leader, I am being focused on establishing trust with my team. I want to be fair with my team. I want to create an environment that promotes psychological safety for every member of my team. If I can start with that, it's very surprising what happens in terms of the engagement scores and so on.
And productivity?
Productivity, it reduces turnover and so on. So that's what I've been studying. I introduced something called the Inclusion Index with Walmart Canada, which was extended globally.
Yes.
And then when I left Walmart Canada after, George Floyd era, there's a lot of calls, and I thought, in my career, maybe it's time to get back into that, Federal Crown Corporation. I was the director of marketing for the Royal Canadian Mint. When you go to the post office, see all those coins, you never guess who did the contract to put all those coins in every post office in Canada. Take a wild guess.
Wow.
It was me. That was a $20 million deal. Yeah, with Canada Post. But so anyway, the this whole idea of working with the engagement surveys and showing people that their scores are going to take off, the productivity, et cetera, is going to be there.
And so that's what that survey is that you're continually putting out there, is to keep gathering as much data as possible, and then you share that with your clients. Or
well, sort of. Okay, so we had the belonging index. When I went to EDC, we called it. I had the inclusion index.
Yes. And
we're speaking fast because in my mind, it's the way I work here.
That's cool.
When I went to Export Development Canada, they were really open. We had the situation with George Floyd, and then at that time, the CEO and the whole leadership team, they said, we don't want to just react. We want to do something smart and planful and measured and so on. The folks at Export Development Canada, they're all like risk-averse people. They're all risk managers, actuarials, and so on. What a brilliant bunch of people. 2,000 of them, they're all like...
But that's their training.
Yeah, it's just 2,000 of almost the smartest people I've ever met all together, right? And they're like, what do we do about, diversity? I'm like, that's a great question, right? So I launched there something called the Belonging Index. Mm-hmm. So 2 questions about diversity, 2 about equity, 2 about inclusion. So the 6 of them formed an index. And this was so well received, it became part of the performance bonus for everybody at the VP level and above collectively. So it was really interesting. We had all the data. We can go down to the department level. There's a thing called a privacy protocol. So you have to have, if you want to sort of check the scores on visible minority, you have to have at least 5 visible minority that answer the survey.
Right,
and there has to be at least 20. So it's a 520 protocol.
Right.
At least 20 people in that department. So that protects the privacy of individuals. So when you have 2,000 people in an organization, you can go pretty deep. So we could see that in, I'll just make it up. There might be a department, whatever department, let's just say finance, for example, and there was an identified gap for that question, for example, maybe 20 points, 25 points difference, and no one ever had any idea that these things existed. So now what are you going to do about it? Well, we have to be very proactive, prescriptive. We have to do things like what I'm talking about, like this diversity of thought stuff, and then all of a sudden, scores go up. And the question is, how do you maintain? Oh yeah, Rich, that's nice, but how do you maintain it? What did I just say? We're going to be doing this every 6 months.
You should just do this interview yourself.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about that. But the thing is, the scores are going to be there.
But let me ask you this tough question. Do you think that in the last 20 years of DEI, that we have improved as a country in terms of how we treat people and how we care for people and how people work?
I would say so. There's been a very solid investment in this DEI space.
Yeah.
I did some research on it.
Tell me.
It's an estimated $2.5 billion invested in the DEI space in Canada. Federal government grants alone since 2016, it's $1.04 billion invested in this. So
invested, but do we see, is it making things better?
Well, okay. So
and I guess it depends what you consider better.
Yeah. What most organizations focus on the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity is about representation. How many women do we have in our leadership ranks? How many visible minorities do we have in this area, et cetera? So that's really about representation. And unfortunately, that could be very easily checked, that box, by hiring a couple of people that are almost like token representatives.
Which happens, yes.
Which happens. And then some of these folks, whether you're a disabled person, you might not have the required accommodation, right, to really be your brilliant self. Yes, you were hired. Yes, you are amazing with cloud computing and AI and everything, but you don't know how to get an extra laptop or whatever, right? And no one's telling you how to do it. And the people that have been there for 20 years, they know how to do it, right? But no one's really helping you. So you're in a quandary, right? And that just applies for everybody, right? So especially for new Canadians coming from other countries, they had 40, 50 people working for them. Now they're like an individual contributor. They're brilliant, but their brilliance can't shine.
Because they don't know, they haven't acclimatized to the culture. Is
Right.
that what you're saying?
And there isn't formal programs to help these people assimilate in terms of the soft skills required to really be your full self. This ends up being a bit, arduous. You end up doing.
Okay, wait a second. Okay, so we're still on the D side. So you're talking about within representation. You're saying within that funnel, okay, you need support for people who may not understand the culture, and they need support in terms of knowing how to get around, move around, and really acquire more human skills in the Canadian way.
Yes, really complicated stuff like, I'm going to do the Timmy's run.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
And they're like, Timmy's, what's Timmy's? And then you're missing the Timmy's run. And that's when you go and you say hi to everybody and you're la, 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 la.
Right.
When it comes time to your performance review and people are assessing how you perform, your attitude, your personality, and so on in Canada represents, I think, a good chunk, maybe 40%. Those soft skills represent about 40. Different hierarchical countries, whether it be India, Philippines, whatever, it's more like 90-10. So it's more technical skills.
Yes,
like if you're technical, you went to the India Institute of Technology, automatically you're going to get, there's 70,000 people applying and there's maybe 200 accepted. So just the fact that you were accepted, guaranteed career, right? Here, that doesn't really matter. It's more, it's not 90-10, it's more like 50-50. So if you don't have the soft skills, you're not on a level playing field. So representation doesn't really do much.
It does. If you don't understand the culture, you can't, or if the culture doesn't understand you.
Right. Two-way street.
Right. And then equity. What is equity?
Equity is about fairness, but all our rights are enshrined in the Charter of Human Rights and so on, right? So I don't think there's many organizations that are going to say, "Oh, we're not going to hire Filipinos here." I'm sorry, right? Like, really, I don't think so, right? So we have these organizations. Well, we're going to do a review of our hiring practices and blah blah blah, and they bring consultants in. They spend all this money. It's like, you don't have to look at There's not, in my opinion, there's not systemic barriers that are imagined or invisible. Whatever. The fact of the matter is, you got no minorities in your leadership team, right?
Right.
So let's start from there.
And then inclusion.
Inclusion is the whole idea of making people feel valued and cared for, right? It's a sense of belonging. We hear now belonging and so on. But again, if you're struggling and you're doing kind of like 2 or 3 jobs, you don't really understand like the unwritten rules. It's very tough and stressful as well. If you're not getting promoted, if you're not getting access to the plum assignments and so on, then you're kind of stuck at a certain pay level. You're wondering how you're going to pay for your 2 kids that are excelling at Schulich. And this is a real problem. That's why what really bugs me is there's too many new Canadians driving Ubers when they should be driving the economy. And we used to talk about driving taxis, and now they're driving Ubers.
Yes.
And it's really unfortunate. We have unlimited resources in this country, precious metal, uranium, wheat, beef, you name it, water, hydro. And what we need is human resources. We need talented people. There's, I think, 20,000 nurses in Ontario that cannot work because their credentials not recognized, and there's similar numbers across Canada for doctors.
Yeah.
And yet we have waiting lines and
we have a crisis that we still, it's not about money. It's about organization and structure and really understanding how to apply. Well, leadership, yeah.
And that leader's worried because they don't know if they can use it to, can I say colored people? Can you say, no, don't say color. Like people are so worried about being politically correct and everything that maybe the safest thing to do for many of them is just to kind of lay low, right? And what we need is for leaders to take a stand right now. Canada needs leadership. And I'm trying to encourage people that be authentic, be transparent, share that data.
Yes.
Let your people know you care about them. That's going to give them that sense of belonging. And most of all, let them know that you value their opinions and they really are excellent. That's why they were hired.
Is there any research that you are aware of about the relationship between belonging and productivity?
Well, I think typically we have our so-called engagement surveys, and historically there's unlimited amounts of research that talk about engaged people will perform better. So that's like a no-brainer. I don't even go there on that. There's no need to even talk about that, right? That's why
Really?
every organization has these engagement surveys every year, right? They're measuring your engagement. So if you're not engaged, you're not going to be as productive. It's
But
kind of
we
obvious.
have a productivity issue in Canada. Like I think, the numbers are really pretty low in terms of, I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but in terms of our productivity, it's
Compared to the U.S., yeah.
compared to the U.S., it's not great, and that's a big challenge for us.
Yeah, that has to do with technology, investment, risk aversion,
Tell me.
and a whole bunch of things. But you have a lot of the. I heard recently an Uber driver. What he does is he goes to Dubai and he's doing
Exam.
he's doing eye surgery because he's not qualified here. So he's driving Uber, and then every few months he goes back to Dubai and does a few surgeries, and that's how he's paying the bills.
So he's a doctor,
Yeah,
and so he goes back.
ophthalmologist.
He goes back to where he's qualified, so that he can work, make some money. Then he comes back. But then I would ask, why do you think he's here then?
Probably for his kids.
Yeah,
And
for opportunity.
we have opportunity in Canada, and this untapped potential is so apparent and obvious to people that are educated and capable.
Yes.
What we're looking for is more leadership. I don't want to get into the political side of things.
No,
but,
nor do I.
But I'm saying every one of us has an obligation to lead, and you can help the young people. You can be a mentor. You can help your community,
Yes.
and not just your community. Work with other communities. I was on the board for the Canadian Mental Health Association, for example, and people don't realize I do a lot of coaching and mentoring and so on, and they say, well, what do I do? I said, well, so what do you do for volunteer work? Well, I work in our mosque. We do whatever, food and stuff. I go, well, you got to get outside of the mosque. Like, you go volunteer
Yes.
with the police. They're starving for help, in
Yes.
terms of their community policing initiatives and so on.
Yep.
All you got to do is go there and say, oh, yeah, well, during Ramadan, blah, 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 and just be yourself. They love it, right? And now you are involved. The mayor is going to be there. The premier might be there, and so on and so forth. So that's a way to network, not just in your little group handing out sandwiches, but actually making a difference and working outside of your comfort zone, and it'll make you more comfortable the more you do that.
Yeah, and it expands. It actually speaks to this whole idea of the diversity of thought. It brings in the complexity of who we are into our current relationships, which is essential. That's actually what diversity is. Diversity is complexity, in my mind, and complexity is of great service to who we are as human beings. If we understand, the more we understand, the greater we become.
Yeah, Dr. Augustine talks about the diversity of different flowers and so on, like in a garden, how beautiful that is, and
Yes.
the different fragrances and the colors and so on. So the research I'm conducting, I'm not so much doing the survey, but I'm creating something called a DOT index, diversity of thought. By the way, the acronym for diversity of thought is DOT. So that's why my logo, you see, is
Yes,
a dot
yes.
made up of a bunch of little dots.
I
And,
like this little notebook you gave me.
yeah. See, maybe you could hold up the logo there.
Ah.
See that little purple one on the left side there, that little purple dot? That's you, Shay. So
Thank you.
what I do is I bring people together, practitioners, lawyers, platforms. Like, I'm working on a mentoring platform. I'm going to change the paradigm around mentoring. It's not about how do I network. It's like, how do I learn about the lived experience of Indigenous people? I've just been promoted. I have 3 Indigenous people on my team. I don't really know about
Yeah.
it. So I can go in and connect, and I can learn about what are the challenges faced? What does the future look like? What are the opportunities, right? And I can educate myself and be more comfortable to delve into that. My research right now, I've identified 5 core competencies.
Yes.
And each competency has 3 behaviors. And I've been working in this field, like I said, the inclusion index and so
Yep.
on. There's behaviors that are associated. So there's 15 behaviors. And wouldn't you know it, the research now, I've reached the directional level in terms of number of completed respondents and so on. And, as I said, you think intuitively that trust and fairness and psychological safety would be a good starting point, right?
Of course.
Well, when I ask people which of these behaviors are most impactful when you
Right.
see them demonstrated, it
Right.
turns out the 3 behaviors associated with that competency
Yes.
scored the highest. And the next one was, dialogue and shared perspective. So now I've got the trust. Now we have to talk, right?
Yes,
How do we
yes.
share? I'm like, okay, guys, let's go. I want to talk.
When I think about that, though, and I did do your survey, by the way.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. I think about just being in relationship with people. That it's not so much to me. It's not so much about learning as much as it is about being in relationship, and being in relationship allows you to learn, allows you to understand, allows you to accept. And when we don't have that, we're judging, we're working off of stereotypes, there's disconnection doesn't allow for us to be safe with one another.
Absolutely. Well, on that same vein, once you start that dialogue with your team, the next thing is I have to have an open mind, and I have to watch my cognitive openness, right, which is one of the categories. And then the next competency is adaptability. So now I'm hearing from my team, they want to do this or that. I can't be rigid in my thinking. I have to be open, right?
Yes.
And I have to work on that competency. And then finally, the whole idea of integration and transformation. That's what I'm all about, right? Would you believe so far only 1.9% on the forced top 5, the forced ranking, only 1.9%, including yourself, I don't know you. It's all anonymous, my survey, but you told me you did it, right?
Did.
So thank you. But yeah, only 1.9% of the completed respondents said that integration and transformation is a impactful competency that they observe.
1.9% of all?
Correct. They selected that among the top 5 behaviors. So out of the 15,
yes,
the 3 actual behaviors, when you add them up,
yes,
it's 1.9. So what does that mean? I don't want to get too numbers.
What does it mean to you?
It means that they ain't seen that. I don't see integrate. What I do, I give my advice, I give my thing, I'm blue in the face, and you know what happens? Nothing. So they don't see. I haven't seen a manager who's competent in terms of integrating what we say and so on.
So there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work to do. But let me ask you this, okay? We talk about the United States a lot,
right,
because it's there, right? There's a lot of influence coming from the U.S. about DEI and EDI and a lot of negativity. Right. Do you think that's influencing a lot of Canadian leaders right now?
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, because it's become now a toxic topic. And I've been working, let's say I'm a leader. I've been working for 10, 15 years in government. I'm about to get that EX1,
yes,
the director, senior director level. And all of a sudden now, someone raises something about, well, I think our Muslim employees shouldn't have time to do prayers. And somebody says that. And I go, yeah, I agree, right? That could be a problem.
Of course.
Right? So maybe you just got to be careful, and that's what people are doing. Everyone's so worried, and they understand it's a toxic environment and so on. So I'm saying...
So it's a toxic top subject, and they're worried that it'll be misinterpreted, so they would rather not, they don't want to touch it.
Correct.
Is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's very little training on what are you supposed to do. Oh, pronouns, he, she, they, them. People can't keep up. They don't know. 2 weeks ago, this was appropriate. Now it's not appropriate, apparently, and so on. So the leaders, by the way, predominantly white males, Canadian, very caring about their communities, their country, and, very patriotic and so on. They're just confused with all this stuff, and there isn't really the time. Everyone's so worried about bottom line. They're not really getting appropriate training, nor is there appropriate training available, and it's very costly. As I said, it's in the 2.5 billion since 1985. And so you asked the question, so where are the results? Well, look at the numbers. As I said, our projection is that 50% of the population will be visible minority. That means 50% of the women will be visible minority in about 20 years.
Yes.
So visible minority women, 50%. If we would think about the representation of visible minority women in leadership roles, we would think that if half are women and half of the women are visible minority, then we would expect 25% of leadership to be women. Today it's 6%. So we have to increase that by 5x. And how's that going to happen? Who's doing anything about that? And by the way, the women coming to this country are highly educated.
Yes.
I mean, highly educated.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So if anything, it should be more than 50%. It should be, in other words, rather than 25, it should be maybe 30%.
Yeah.
Management representation. And when you talk about linguistic capability, cultural capability, understanding the buyers, and so on. So we have a ways to go. So how do you go there? I was going
to ask. But you asked. So
Well, I would say just embrace this idea of diversity of thought. This is a natural. We have natural resources. We have all sorts of potential. We say that our diversity is our greatest strength, but I think diversity of thought is the key to unlock that strength.
Yes,
and it's easy. You just go in. You say, "Hey, I love all of you." Okay, like that's why I hired you. I know you're all fantastic. You're excellent. I just recently saw our engagement survey. They now segment it by group. We have some differences here, folks, and it really disturbs me. I am committed to do what I need to do so that collectively, I call it collective collective accountability. As a team, we're going to do what we need to do, and then you'll see those results are going to shoot up unbelievably. Again, you might ask the question, well, how do you keep those results? Every 6 months, we're doing another survey.
Right.
So there's your built-in accountability, not just for the leader, but for the whole team.
But the other piece of this is there's also conflict, right? I mean, America aside, the toxicity of the subject aside, anytime you bring different kinds of people, anytime you bring the same kinds of people together, you're going to have conflict. So I guess also diversity has to also be about dealing with conflict and addressing conflict and finding ways for people to feel safe and feel like they belong and also disagree with each other.
When I was 4 or 5 years old on my street, we had a lot of diversity,
Yes.
but we didn't have any conflict. So I don't think conflict is an inherent side of the human condition here, particularly in Canada. We are made up of eclectic, diverse, educated people.
Yes.
There's no need for us to fight. Many people came to this country because they don't want to fight.
Yes.
They don't
yes.
want conflict. You know, my mantra, Richard Pinnock thrives in an environment of order, peace, and tranquility. The opposite of order is chaos. I hate chaos. The opposite of peace is conflict. I hate conflict. The opposite of tranquility is having noise around.
Yes.
You know, you can't.
Yes.
I can't think with all this noise. I thrive in an environment of order, peace, and tranquility. If I feel I'm not thriving, I never blame it on myself. What I realize is that one of these three things is not aligned, and I'm going to focus now on reducing the chaos. And when that happens, I know I will thrive. So I think we have to take a positive, optimistic look. We have to understand the capability and the potential of all these people. It's it's hugely untapped. And I think as a leader, if you, in your one team, if you do this, you're going to stand out as a superstar. You might be the next vice president.
You're like a great campaigner. You might be the next vice president. But conflict is natural. It is a part of who we are, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. But do you think our government needs to be better at also talking about who we are as a pluralistic society? Because that also leads to us supporting the idea of diversity of thought. You know, like they're all related. It's all interconnected.
Absolutely. Well, again, I'm I'm recently engaged now with the Institute on Governance, which is a government agency in Ottawa. They train recent promoted executives in the public sector. They have 9 full days plus 3 full days where the teams they're called action learning groups. So I'm one of the coaches for the action learning group, and I'm also part of the faculty. I'm doing my diversity of thought training. And it's being received very well from what I'm hearing, the research. So what people are looking for is an opportunity to breathe and to be themselves and not be constrained with all of this stuff. So the idea of, we're a pluralistic society. Yeah, we all get it. We all know that.
Yes.
The question is, how do we operate?
Yes.
And I would encourage everybody. I'm really an evangelist for this, right? I'm trying to start, and this is the first time I haven't really done much, and I've done no advertising or nothing. Somehow people are finding me, though. But the idea is, we're Canadians. Let's be proud. Let's take care of our children.
Yes,
right?
yes. And think of our ancestors to come, our ancestors we've come from, and our descendants, right? Like the whole idea that you think 7 generations ahead and 7 generations behind.
Yeah, and this is the whole topic of legacy. A lot of people work and they say, oh, I want to have my legacy. I want people to say this and that. I never think about legacy. It's very rare that I'm always in the background, you know, like I'm always in the background. But the thing is that I realize is legacy is something that will take place after we're no longer here, right? So I know there's a lot. There's been, like I said, thousands of young people, newcomers. I've made an impact with a lot of people. But while I'm here, I want to focus on my first priority, and that is my kids, my 2 daughters. And that's why I'm doing all of this, right? Like I have a vested interest. I don't want to buy a big car or some big house or drive around and scare people with, flashy jewelry and all that. That's all foolishness. Like my father would say, it's foolishness, man. Right? What I want to do is I want to do my part to help contribute to our wonderful country. I think
I was going to ask you.
I brought it along here.
So
here you go.
Oh, let me see it. Okay. Now, what did you get? You got the King Charles Award.
Yeah, the King Charles Coronation Medal for service to country, community, and field of endeavor.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Interestingly,
And
it was
when
minted
did you
by.
when did you get this?
Oh, it was about 8 months ago. So it was a big surprise. It was minted by the Royal Canadian Mint as well.
Interesting.
So the Mint's program to do custom medals and so on, medallions and so on and so forth,
beautiful.
was something that I was working on while I was there as well.
Yes.
So yeah, a lot of interesting little pieces. But I think everyone in Canada, all of your listeners, and again, I want to thank you for inviting me here.
The work that you are doing is tremendous. It's impactful. I've seen the impact of it in our community, and I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity to talk to you, and I wish you continued growth and success and beautiful complexity.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you very much. Hey, I'm working on a book. It's called Diversity of Thought, and that's what it's really occupying my time. I'm up to about about maybe 14 chapters. I'm almost done.
Okay, so when it's done, you come back to Let's Talk.
You'll see the first copy,
draft.
right?
Okay. All right. Amazing. Richard Pinnock, thank you for being on Let's Talk. My friends, it's Che, and I'm so grateful for your time. Please subscribe. Please share the show. Please tell us what you think. And until next time, be well, be wonderful, be strong. My friends, thank you for joining me on Let's Talk, produced by Wise Mindly Inc. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take action, reflect, or embrace on a new way of thinking, on a new path. And if you enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully you did, don't forget to subscribe, share, and even leave a review. Reviews matter. They allow us to do way more than we're doing now. Let's continue the journey of growth and well-being together. Until next time, I'm Coach Che Marville. Stay connected, stay curious, and let's keep talking.